Well, I'm a photographer by trade, and photography was the industry I was heading towards, and worked in portrait studios and photo labs for many years going through school. Eventually went to a photography school, and it was while I was at a photography school I got an opportunity to work on cruise ships. So was a photographer on cruise ships. That gave me kind of the travel bug, and I wanted to travel, read some books about India, and then in 1985 went to India and just roamed around North India and photographed there. And that's when I met my first Muslim. And that's when the Lord really captured our heart for Muslims. We eventually established a couple of small groups that were studying about Jesus and learning about Jesus. When the Taliban then came through in the summer of '97, that got all busted up. And eventually then we had to leave. We just couldn't operate within that context anymore. Well, a lot of our impression about Muslims comes from what we see on television and radio. And that's not false. That's true, and that is a particular side of Islam. It's ugly, it's dark, and it's a reality. However, the other side of it is a side that we've experienced as we've lived with Muslims. And when you become part of their neighborhood, when you become part of their community, they care for you in a way that we have never experienced in the West. In Uzbekistan, when we were about to be deported and the police came to our house, our neighbors all came and stood in front of the police so that they could not get me and take me to jail. Time and time again, as we lived amongst them and became part of their community, and our identity was Christians. We shared Christ. We weren't Muslims in any way. They knew that we were Christian. They cared for us. And, when living in a Muslim context opens up understanding of Scripture. So we think of Psalm 23, where it says, "In the face of my enemy, you prepared a meal for me." And so Psalm 23 is this idea that enemies and bad people are all around, but there's a safety within this tent. And that really is what the Muslim world is like when you live amongst them. You are inside their tent, and so they care for you and they provide for you, and they will do that even if you are considered their enemy. In this case, our neighbors didn't, and my co-workers in Afghanistan from my story didn't consider me an enemy. But hospitality, as we said, is a high virtue. And so our experience has been that as you enculturate yourself and live amongst Muslims, you see a very different side of who they are. At the end of the day, they need Christ. They need Christ just like a gang member in South Los Angeles. I walked one time around downtown Miami. I was more scared there than I ever was in Kabul. When their eyes are open to who Christ is, then transformation happens. And that's what we want to see. Whether it's in Muslims in Kabul or people in South Los Angeles or downtown Phoenix or Miami, they need the Lord.